From the text of the Book of Mormon, we know that the final battle took place at the Hill Cumorah, that Mormon buried the records there, but it says that he gave the remaining plates to his son Moroni, the golden plates, and that he had 36 years where he fled from the Lamanites, and that it wasn't the same location as the final battle as where Moroni buried the plates. Mormonism with the Murph, where Larry Singh explores church history and the church's truth claims. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in the last episode, we had a look at Reformed Egyptian and the characters on the Whitmer document. We had a look for, is there any evidence for the Reformed Egyptian language? And we talked about Egyptian influence in Israel before Lehi and his family would have left. Reformed Egyptian is just modified or altered Egyptian and Hebrew characters. We also discussed if the characters document are authentic ancient characters resembling Egyptian hieratic and Mayan glyphs, or if it's just deformed English that Joseph Smith invented. We had a look at critics' view that it's deformed English, Dan Vogel's theory that Joseph Smith invented them himself, perhaps influenced by some magical characters that he'd seen. We had a look at some faithful views, saying that these resemble ancient characters, and Jerry Grover, who attempted a secular translation, comparing it to Egyptian hieratic and some Mayan glyphs as well. Go back and watch that one if you haven't. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the Hill Cumorah. So the Hill Cumorah is where the final battle happened in the Book of Mormon of both the Jaredites and the Nephites, where millions were killed and where the Nephites were wiped out. Claimed to be the same hill where Joseph Smith received the plates from the angel Moroni in New York. Hill Cumorah has been believed by the church where the final battle happened to be the hill in New York near Joseph Smith's home. However, critics state that it's a clean hill, that there's no archaeological evidence for any battle happening there, and this therefore disproves Joseph Smith's claims and the Book of Mormon's historicity. So let's dive in. Critics state that there are numerous statements by past church leaders and prophets that have identified and claimed that the hill in New York is the place where the final battle happened and the epic battles for the Nephites and the Jaredite nations. Past prophets believed and claimed that, and Joseph Smith also believed that this is the place where the final battle took place. However, archaeologically speaking, it is a clean hill. No artifacts, walls, trenches, arrowheads are found. Pre-Columbian people did not settle or build here. This is not the place. This is not the place of Moroni's last stand. We must look elsewhere for that hill. So shouldn't we expect to find some evidences of historical battles spoken of in the Book of Mormon? Could it all just vanish without a trace? And this is a very good argument, and it's a fair criticism. I grew up believing that the same hill where Joseph Smith received the gold plates from the angel Moroni is where the final battles happened, and if it's a clean hill, doesn't this disprove the Book of Mormon? So the church has no official position on Book of Mormon geography. They have this to say: since the publication of the Book of Mormon in 1830, members and leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have expressed numerous opinions about the specific locations of events discussed in the book. Some believe that the history depicted in the Book of Mormon, with the exception of the events in the Near East, occurred in North America, while others believe that it occurred in Central or South America. Although church members continue to discuss such theories today, the church's only position is that events in the Book of Mormon took place in the ancient Americas. The church does not take a position on the specific geographical locations of Book of Mormon events in the ancient Americas. Speculation on the geography of the Book of Mormon may mislead instead of enlighten. Such a study can be a distraction from its divine purpose. And I'll have to do a video where I go into sort of where I think the best scholarship and the best candidate is for Book of Mormon geography. I do lean more towards Mesoamerica, as I've been looking at Brent Gardner and John Sorensen's book, but we'll talk about that more in a future video. So the church has no official position on where the location of the Book of Mormon, the geography of the Book of Mormon, or where the Hill Cumorah is. Bear has to say, at what point in modern times this New York hill was first called Cumorah is difficult to determine. In his account in the Pearl of Great Price, Joseph refers to the hill where the plates were buried, but never calls it by any name. In the Doctrine and Covenants, the name Cumorah only appears one time in an 1842 epistle written by Joseph Smith. And again, what do we hear? Glad tidings from Cumorah. But no other uses of Cumorah have been found in any other of Joseph Smith's personal writings. When this name does appear, it has been added by later editors, or it is being quoted from another individual. However, there is some evidence that Joseph Smith and other church leaders believed that the events of the Book of Mormon spanned the North and South American continents, that the Isthmus of Panama was the narrow neck of land, and that the hill in New York was the Cumorah referred to in the Book of Mormon. Joseph wrote a letter to his wife Emma during Zion's camp in which he referred to wandering over the plains of the Nephites. Oliver Cowdery wrote in one of his letters to W. W. Phelps, published in the Messenger and Advocate, that this continent refers to both North and South America. Columbus never set foot in the present-day United States. He was confined to Mesoamerica. So there's no early evidence of Joseph Smith referring to the hill as Hill Cumorah, that Angel Moroni told him that that is the name of the hill. It appears to have gotten its name later on. The earliest writings, I believe, comes from W. W. Phelps in 1833. And then from tradition, that appears that they all just assumed that this was the same hill. And it seems likely when we looked at DNA that church leaders, and probably most likely Joseph Smith, believed in a hemispheric geography, that the Book of Mormon events took place in both North, Central, and South America, which is why he probably referred to, as they went through Zion's camp, as the plains of the Nephites. There is some evidence that Joseph Smith believed the events might have happened in Mesoamerica. William McBride and Andrew Hamilton drew maps claiming to have received the information from Joseph Smith that the main events took place in Mesoamerica and that Moroni traveled from Mesoamerica to New York. There are some tales of Moroni dedicating temple sites along his travel. So I know that there are, those statements from Joseph Smith where he believes, Zion's camp, that those were the plains of the Nephites. My personal belief is that Joseph Smith didn't know the exact locations of the Book of Mormon. I think, like others, he assumed it was a hemispheric geography. And I think you could also argue that might work in his favor when you look at the geographical distances that are traveled in the Book of Mormon. It really couldn't have been more than 200 miles by 500 miles. And surely if he authored the book, he would know it would take more than 20 days journey to go from North to South America. However, as the translator, he likely wouldn't have read it that carefully. I know I didn't growing up. So I personally believe that it wasn't revealed the exact locations of where the Book of Mormon took place, and Joseph Smith, as well as other church leaders, had assumptions and were speculating and theorizing, and that perhaps his theories shifted throughout his life. Despite this early identification of the Hill Cumorah in the Book of Mormon being the hill in New York, readers who have studied the text closely would later conclude that they could not be the same. The primary text to demonstrate this is in Mormon 6:6. And it came to pass that when we had gathered all our people, in all our people in one to the land of Cumorah, behold, I, Mormon, began to be old, and knowing it to be the last struggle of my people, and having been commanded of the Lord that I should not suffer the records which have been handed down by our fathers, which were sacred, to fall into the hands of the Lamanites, for the Lamanites would destroy them. Therefore I made this record out of the plates of Nephi, and hid up in the Hill Cumorah all the records which had been entrusted to me by the hand of the Lord, save it were these plates, which I gave unto my son Moroni. So Mormon clearly separates the Hill Cumorah from where Moroni buries the plates. In 1937 to 39, Washburn argued that the Nephite and Jaredite final battles at the Hill Cumorah were near the narrow neck of land and thus unlikely to be in New York. Thomas Ferguson was of the same view in 1947, and Sidney Sperry came down on the side of a Middle America location in 1964, though he had previously endorsed a New York location. From the text itself, despite past beliefs and traditions by Joseph Smith and other church leaders, there really is no way the Hill Cumorah where Moroni buried the gold plates is the same as where the final battle happened, because the text clearly says Mormon buried the plates and the final battle happened there, but he gave the gold plates to his son Moroni, and he carried them with him. Dalian's joke stated that he and likely others had assumed a hemispheric geography, that they are probably the only people here, and that any archaeological evidence to the contrary of what is claimed in the Nephite record would pose a problem. And I will be doing an upcoming video on archaeological evidence in Mesoamerica and things which I see aligning with the Book of Mormon text and Mayan culture. And check out my interview with Brent Gardner when he touches on a few of those things. I think it's really interesting. So Book of Mormon Central has to say this in summary: Mormon made this record out of the plates of Nephi and hid up in the Hill Cumorah all the records which had been entrusted to me by the hand of the Lord, save it were these few plates which I gave unto my son Moroni. That is to say, Mormon deposited what remained of Nephite textual sources in the Hill Cumorah for preservation and entrusted the plates of what would later become the published Book of Mormon to his son Moroni, who finished and later sealed the record. There is no historical evidence that Moroni called the Hill Cumorah in 1823, during his first encounter with the prophet Joseph Smith. The name Cumorah came into common circulation amongst the Latter-day Saints no earlier than the mid-1830s. The first documented person to identify the hill in Manchester, New York, where Joseph Smith received the plates with the Hill Cumorah, appears to have been William W. Phelps in 1833. Phelps' identification was later followed by Oliver Cowdery in 1835, probably due to the popularity and influence of these two early leaders. The identification of the hill in New York as the same hill, probably due to the popularity and influence of these two leaders' writings, the identification of the hill in New York as the same Hill Cumorah mentioned by Mormon in Book of Mormon became commonplace amongst the early Latter-day Saints. The identification of the Hill Cumorah in New York as being the same hill where the Nephites perished has remained commonplace amongst members and leaders of the church. However, most church leaders have simply and accurately said that the geography of the Book of Mormon is not revealed. Additionally, several Latter-day Saint scholars have questioned whether the hill in New York could feasibly be the Hill Cumorah described in the Book of Mormon. Due to inconsistencies between the location of the hill described in the Book of Mormon, the real-world topography of Western New York, as well as the lack of any archaeological evidence for the violent mass destruction of hundreds of thousands of people in one concentrated location in that area through sustained warfare. Some have suggested that the location of the final battle took place somewhere other than the New York Hill, such as in modern-day Mexico, just northwest of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, because Moroni had to flee for his life, getting away from the area of the final battle and wandering wherever he could for the safety of his own soul, and because he could not bury the plates until AD 421, which was 36 years after the final battle at the Nephite Hill. One could expect that thousands of miles might lie between the battle site and the final repository of the plates. And we also know that someone in the 17th century did travel from Mesoamerica up to North America, and in 36 years, it definitely allows possibility for Moroni to have done that. And there are also those folk tale traditions of him dedicating temple sites on his way up to the Hill Cumorah. Those who assume that the final Book of Mormon events took place in what is now the northeastern United States believe that the hill in upstate New York is the only hill called Cumorah, wrote one historian summarizing the issue. Others conclude there must be two hills called Cumorah, one in Central America, where they believe the final battles of the Book of Mormon took place, and the other in New York, where Moroni ultimately buried the gold plates he later delivered to Joseph Smith. The church itself has no official position on this matter, leaving individual Latter-day Saints to decide for themselves which theory they prefer to follow. So, in summary, critics state that the Hill Cumorah in New York, near Joseph's home, that is the location of the final battle for both the Jaredites and the Nephites in the Book of Mormon, being the same hill where Moroni visited Joseph Smith and where he obtained the gold plates. However, they say that archaeology disproves that this could have been the place for the final battle because there is no archaeological trace of any battle artifacts, and it is a clean hill. I think it's quite clear that past prophets and church leaders from the time of Joseph Smith up until recent believe that the Hill Cumorah is the location of the final battle in New York. However, I would say it's most likely that Joseph Smith and church leaders, they held a hemispheric view of Book of Mormon geography. I don't think they knew where the Book of Mormon, I don't think they knew the exact location of the Book of Mormon and were speculating and theorizing, and they just had their own assumptions. I think it is interesting, the document written by Bryden Hamilton apparently coming from Joseph Smith about Moroni and the events being mostly in Mesoamerica and then him traveling up to New York. Perhaps Joseph Smith's view of Book of Mormon geography might have evolved and changed over time. From the text of the Book of Mormon, we know that the final battle took place at the Hill Cumorah, that Mormon buried the records there, but it says that he gave the remaining plates to his son Moroni, the golden plates, and that he had 36 years where he fled from the Lamanites, and that it wasn't the same location as the final battle as where Moroni buried the plates. So in conclusion, the Hill Cumorah in New York, that is not where the final battle took place, Nephites and the Jaredites. The text makes that very clear. I believe it was just given the same name, Cumorah, by early Latter-day Saints, and it became just tradition passed down, an assumption, an incorrect assumption, such as the hemispheric geography. And my personal feelings that the Book of Mormon itself best reflects a limited geography in Mesoamerica, and I'll do a future video on that, diving more into what I see as the correspondences and maybe responding to the heartland theory. So that really sums up today's video. If you've enjoyed it, like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Mormonism with the Murph. In the next video, we're going to be looking at Gadianton robbers in the book Helaman, in the Book Mormon, and did Joseph Smith just take from anti-Masonic rhetoric in his environment, and was that the influence and the inspiration for him writing about the Gadianton robbers and secret combinations in the Book of Mormon? And we'll be looking at what critics have to say, and of course the apologetic responses. So like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Take care. All our people in one land, to the land of Cumorah. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the Gadianton robbers. That's hard to say. Gadianton robbers. Thanks everyone for watching this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a like, share it with others who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future content. You can also listen to these episodes on podcast form on Anchor or Spotify, and you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out my website for more content, personal blog, and more. And if you care to donate to support me, you can via my PayPal or Patreon, or through the website. And you can also give donations via YouTube through Super Chats. Thanks for watching Mormonism with the Murph. Take care. Bye-bye.